Hey everyone, what is going on? Welcome back to another video here on the channel. This week's video, we're going to be talking about landing a radio-controlled airplane. We're going to go through the exact landing approach that I use when I land any real type of radio-controlled airplane. Now before we jump into a couple clips that I'm going to show, I want to talk about some of the terms that we will be using in this video and kind of the general idea so that you can look for it as you're watching the clips that we're going to show. So the first big thing is I'm going to be referring to the final approach, a base leg, and a downwind leg. And it's really important to understand what all three of these mean. When I'm referring to the downwind leg, this is the spot on the field that the plane is going to be in, traveling in a certain direction in the landing sequence. The downwind leg is going to be on the opposite side of the field and heading downwind, hence the name downwind leg. Then when I get to the end of the downwind leg, I'm going to make a turn that is directly towards ourselves. If we were to imagine us on the field, it's going to be a 90-degree turn, so we won't be exactly approaching where we stand. We're going to be 90 degrees and approaching the sideline of the field. Then we're going to make another 90-degree turn. This is where we're going to turn the airplane in towards where the runway is, and that's going to be the final approach. The most important part of the final approach is this final approach should be done heading into the wind. So this will help us as we land our aircraft. An important part of the downwind leg stretch when we're landing an airplane is to not travel too far out and get the plane way out there. There's no real need to get the plane way out there. What you want to do is find that happy median where you can turn the plane in on the base leg and then final approach so that you don't really need to add a lot of power to get the plane back to the field. You want to be able to find that nice smooth glide slope for the airplane. Let's talk about what the glide slope is, because this is another important factor when it comes to landing the airplane. Anytime I have my airplane in the air, if I'm off power, regardless of the type of plane, it will continue to fly and I know that it will not stall. And this is because the plane automatically enters that glide slope, and it's regardless of how heavy the plane is. If the plane is really heavy, it just means it's going to come to the ground a lot quicker. However, the big point here is I know that when I reduce the power in my plane, it's not going to stall, so I do not need to be worried about how slow it could get because it's going to stay in that glide slope. Now, the way that I accomplish this is I trim the plane to do this. In a lot of cases, I see people flying their planes to a point where they shut the power off to the motor or go down to idle on a internal combustion type engine on the airplane, and the plane falls out of this glide slope and there's risk for a wing to stall, leading to bad things to happen. So this is an important part when it comes to the setup of the airplane in order to allow you to enter a nice glide slope. And once you find that glide slope, you want to just bring the plane gently down and maintain that constant amount of power to the plane until you start to approach your landing strip. And once you approach the landing strip, then you want to slow down your descent rate. And this is where we start to add power in to the plane, add power to the motor so that we can actually increase the speed of the airplane and slow our descent rate. What we're trying to find is the ultimate balance between the slowest flying airplane speed that we can achieve as well as the slowest descent rate. Obviously we need to come towards the ground, so it's not going to be zero, but it's going to be approaching zero so that we can nice and easily touch down very smoothly. With that in mind, let's go land a couple airplanes here in the simulator. We're going to take off and we're going to start that initial landing sequence of events that I typically perform every time I land my radio controlled airplanes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself some half flaps so that we can take off. I'm going to apply full throttle here. The plane pretty well gets itself off the air. I'm going to pick the gear up and reduce throttle a little bit. And we're going to now enter in that we want to land. So we're going to start the procedure and process right now. So what I normally do is I drop my gear right away here in this last leg. As I come back around to where I'm standing, I want to make sure that we have the gear out. So we see two main gear, we see a nose gear. As soon as you see that gear out, you can go fly the airplane, keep your speed up, and turn back for base leg from your downwind approach. So here's the downwind leg that we're doing right now. Once you get a decent distance out, you don't want to overshoot. A lot of times you go and overshoot this and you end up too far. I'm pulling in some of the landing flaps right now, so now I'm just adjusting. I got it all the way down to idle, and I'm going to come in for the landing. So all I want to do is start to add a little bit of power as I'm slowing my descent rate here. I'm adding power, adding power, adding power, and I want to barely just touch the surface here. Nice balloon flare. There we go. We don't want a balloon, we only want a flare. So we're gonna do it from the other side now. So I got my half flaps in. I'm gonna apply full throttle and let the plane take itself right up into the air. Flaps come up, gear come up, and now we're gonna go right into our landing sequence. First thing I do, drop the gear. I wanna give it tons of time for that gear to come all the way out so that I can visually inspect and see it out. Some landing gear have a delay set because they're on a sequencer of some kind so that doors can open and all that. So there we go, we see gear. I'm gonna go and we can cut it. We don't need to do a full lap here. We can turn short of a full circuit and enter the downwind leg. So as I'm entering the downwind leg, I'm trying to get the perfect amount of distance between the plane and the runway when I turn base. So I'm gonna turn base and then right into final and apply all my flaps. So we got full landing flaps and I'm down to idle. So you don't want to go too far out and you want to maintain, let the plane sink, and then as soon as it gets down to a certain height, start to apply power back in so that you can get the plane slowing its rate of descent. And then just when it touches down, we're applying less and less power and more flare to get that descent rate and ground speed as slow as possible. And that's how you do it. Same idea when it comes to a jet-powered turbine aircraft. Here we can see the main gears are out, the nose gear is out in the gear check pass. Now we can go on our final leg. We got a little bit longer of a final leg than I typically like. Once we get to that specific distance that we're looking for, we can turn base, and that's going to happen right here. And once we turn base on this particular aircraft, I drop the throttle all the way down to idle. You can hear that. And we're on our final approach. Now we just want to go and bleed the speed off, get the energy levels down, and make sure that our descent rate is going to be pretty well zero. And that's what we're doing when we flare right there and get the plane on the ground. Well guys, there you go. I hope this gives you a different perspective as to how to land a radio-controlled airplane. There's a lot of information on it. This is the approach that I use and it works very well for me. As always, like the video if you do. Don't forget to hit that sub button so that I can see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next one.